Hey, welcome to the Growth Whisperers podcast, where everything we talk about is related to helping leaders and their teams build enduring, great businesses. I'm Kevin Lawrence, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Brad Giles. Hey, Brad, how you doing?
G'day, how you going? I'm awesome.
Awesome. That's a great way to start. So what topics do we have today, Brad? What are we going to spend our time talking about and trying to create some different views about today?
Yeah, so today, a few weeks ago, we spoke about cinemas who pivoted to drive-ins. So we've got a new and interesting take on that and what some are doing in that arena. We've got an interesting question about, for leadership teams, do they get a free pass in this environment, the COVID environment? So should we just say, well, it's okay, it's COVID, you get a free pass, don't worry about executing your KPIs and your priorities? Or should it be the opposite, a completely hardline approach? We've got that. We've got an interesting talk about shifting from the health crisis to the upcoming economic crisis. So we've kind of gone through the health phase, and now we're confronted with the economic hangover, as it were. But let's start with drive-in concerts. So
yes, let's start with that.
Yeah. So as I said, we spoke about drive-in cinemas. So cinemas, a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about, have pivoted whereby you go to the cinema complex, an empty car park. They've got a huge screen up there, and then you park your car just like a drive-in theatre. So effectively, cinemas pivoting to be drive-in theatres. And I think they were even doing it free. And then you would pay for the food, and that would pay their running costs and help them to get some revenue coming in. Well, an interesting take on that this week was from rock concerts in Denmark. So what they've done is they've got a huge car park, and they've said, we'll get the band up front on stage, maintain social distancing, adhere to the law. You stay in your car, you tune your radio into the FM station, and then you watch and listen to the band play live.
It's a great idea, hey?
Yeah.
Empty, we call them parking lots, Brad, but we know what you mean by a car park. Car park is a very practical name. But yeah, we've got these empty parking lots from places that can be used, or you could use the same field that a festival uses, as long as it's not too, wet and muddy. But what a great idea. You get to have the visceral experience of sitting there listening to the music. And it's great that the ones that people are doing things on Instagram and other channels to be able to broadcast, which is wonderful and great. But there's nothing like being in person for those things. So I think it's an awesome idea.
And it's a little adventure, something to do on, I don't know, maybe a date with your wife. Let's maintain social distancing, right? But or your husband. But it's something to do. You get to see them. It's an event that they get to host. I'm sure they might make some money out of it. Yeah, it's just another great example of companies that are pivoting into a different environment. Now, we've seen them, I suppose, do similar things with live streaming on YouTube or Instagram. But you had another example, I think, of an ethnic restaurant. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I will. But before we go there, I would say, like, if somebody was doing that around me, I would go, because it's like I was, talking to my daughter today, like, about trying to find something fun to do this weekend. She goes, but Dad, there's nothing fun to do. Yeah. I mean, fun for her is going shopping and things with her friends. But if there was events like this, like, we need these. They're part of our world to have, whether it's the theater or events or going to an aquarium, we need them. And I hope somebody does that around, and maybe someone is doing it around Vancouver. Hey, for the concert promoters, Live Nation and such in the West, if you're thinking about it, I think you should do it. I think you could do well. We're dying for live entertainment. So yeah, on the other side, and we got our eyes open for what are people doing to do really well in this. We call it, in the West, we call it making hay while the sun is shining. Where are the pivots? And I'll keep this a bit generic, but a friend of a friend owns a couple of ethnic restaurants, and they're down. Like, their sales are off probably 20%, and it's that type of ethnic restaurant that would do a lot of takeout, or could do a lot of takeout.
Yeah.
It's not a high-end steakhouse or something like that, where takeout's probably not their strongest revenue stream potentially. But what they found is fascinating, and we're looking for these little gems, is that they're actually making more money than normal.
Yeah.
because it's all takeout and they don't have wait staff and staff cleaning tables, or heck, even a dishwasher washing the plates for the customers, they're actually making more money than they normally make because they're well suited to takeout. Now, that was a surprise to me. I did not expect that, but I thought it was
Do you know if
another.
they're getting a job stimulus from the government?
They probably are, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But this was profit without taking into account the stimulus.
Yeah. Okay.
They just pure operational profit. And I imagine, I've never been into their restaurants, but I imagine they're probably smaller spaces, kind of like the sushi place we have down the road here that I love so much. You have a smaller place that probably has a dozen or 15 tables and normally does a fair amount of takeout, and they're just cranking out the takeout. So it's wonderful to see a business that's fairly seriously affected actually doing quite well. So is there anything else you've seen, Brad? Like, is there anything, if you look over the last week or so, where you go, hey, this business person, really has found a way to make hay while the sun is shining and really pivot ethically and appropriately from what's going on?
I don't know if in the past week, but I would say it's more of a broader theme where a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs are looking and saying, I can run this business model better, or this is the opportunity. Yes. I've been waiting for a trigger, a catalyst, an opportunity to move from the legacy model, perhaps, and this is the trigger. So I think that, like your ethnic restaurant example, I think there are a lot of people out there right now, business owners specifically, who are thinking, do you know what, I can run this business a lot leaner, or I can run it a lot smarter. And there were a lot of societal or types of shifts in the business world that were just eating away very slowly. So for the restaurant example, maybe Uber Eats, they were eating away very slowly, and there was no big trigger for them to change. And I think this is the big trigger. And I think that we're going to see a lot of businesses coming out the other side of this with vastly different business models, either by necessity or by choice, where they've said, I don't need to have 70 staff. I can probably do this on 40 and use the internet better and build. One of the biggest changes, to your question, is around direct to consumer. So cutting out the middleman, be it a shopping center, be it a retailer. There's a big change from these traditional models to building relationships direct with the consumer.
Correct. Yeah, and in many cases, the middleman does get worked out of the system in time unless they add a lot of value. Yeah. So for example, I got two others that come to mind as we're talking here, Brad. I've got a friend who she owns a gluten-free bakery, right? So they've got a big bakery and a small retail, and then a retail in another part of the city, kind of a niche. And by the way, normally gluten-free stuff tastes like chewing on a chunk of old leather. Her stuff is spectacular. It's called Delish Gluten-Free in Vancouver. If you've had it, it's amazing. Anyway, so what they have found is that they have a basic app that they've been using and a basic way that they've been doing online sales. And it's exploding. So they're actually building a proper full functional app to do online sales. And she's going to be testing it this week. Hopefully she'll be okay with me telling you about that. But the point of she's going to be testing it. And because the demand is there, because it's a specialty product that you can't get in a lot of places. And a lot of people would pick it up on their way back and forth to work or whatever it happens to be. But this is allowing her, and she does some retail, but this is allowing her to go direct to consumer, which in her case also has better margins. And do some direct to consumer to her loyal customers who want to keep getting her products. So she'll figure that out. The other one
previously sold through a channel, was that right?
They sold a little bit through wholesale, a little bit through retail, and then through their stores.
Okay.
Right. They had and because it's such a high demand, if you can't have gluten, you ideally crave, she makes these amazing cookies and muffins and cinnamon buns and all of these things. They're insane. But the other one is I was reminded of is on the weekend, we were chatting with some friends, and and we were talking where we spend our summers is it's where I like to go because the racetrack is there. We can go and race cars and go
Yeah.
karts. But it's also one of Canada's best wine regions called the Okanagan. And so we were there with some friends and we were talking about it. And people, as we're having some wine that night, a lot of the wine that we're drinking was coming from people's wine clubs, which are a brilliant concept. Because when we're up there in our free time, we'll go visit these wineries, and then you get a subscription, and every either 3 or 4 months, you get your shipment.
Yep.
And I'm reminded of it today because I had some that showed up today from a wine club that I'm part of.
Yeah.
Which was good timing. But it's interesting because they were telling me about this wine club that they're part of at another winery that has a couple of exceptional wines.
Yeah.
But they also give you access to concert series. So not only are they selling direct to consumer, and there's 3 different layers to this wine club. The basic, the intermediate, and then the top.
Yeah.
Now with the top, you get better wines, but you also get exclusive access or first access to their amazing, spectacular summer concert series. So if you take this is a past innovation.
Yeah.
So not only is it wine, not only is it wine club, but it's exclusive events that are part of that wine club. And again, that's not because of this virus thing. It's because of their innovations in the past. And because of the quality of the wine, which we quite enjoyed, but also the access to these amazing events. Like one of the events, like they had Jay Leno up to do a live event. And this winery is called Mission Hill. A local Vancouver guy built his dream vineyard, and it's just absolutely stunning. And anyway, it's interesting, right? So that's not new, but I was just reminded of it. But again, it's one of those direct-to-consumer business models that probably has an opportunity to scale right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is the saying? Innovation is born of necessity, or something
Correct.
like that. People are in this situation, and there's this kind of, I don't know, it does feel at the moment like we're between the health crisis and the economic crisis.
Yes.
It's like the hurricane that's going through, and there's a little bit of a calm before the storm. Now, that may be completely unfair to some of the people who are working incredibly hard in health, or some of the people who are suffering, okay?
Fair.
But it definitely feels like now, well, for context, my kids went back to school on Friday.
Wow.
a few days ago.
Wow.
And that was a pretty big deal. Now, in Western Australia, we're one of the, I guess, the least impacted areas globally, because we're in Australia, which is an isolated island, and we're surrounded by desert. So, and let's be fair, we're not a hub going to somewhere else like Singapore or New York. So within that, we've been very fortunate. So we're kind of leading the recovery, for want of a better term, or we've had enough days with zero where we're beginning to feel relaxed about going back to school, etc. Still under social quarantining, but now we begin to look at what's the hangover. What's kind of, I think a lot of people's, as well as their thoughts, thinking about how is my business model going to improve? How can I improve my margins and run a leaner ship which is more closely aligned to my decision maker customer, cutting out the middleman, etc., building that brand. Now we're looking at, well, now that if the health thing is not behind us, but we're beginning to see a decline in new cases in a lot of places all over the world, and we know it's a shutdown world in this concept of the dance. Well, what's happening economically, and what's that hangover going to be? And when these job stimulus packages from the governments, we've got them in Australia, you mentioned Canada, and the States, all over the world, when they end, what's going to be the hangover that we're kind of caught with, and how do we maintain profitability?
Yeah, and it's almost like, hey, congratulations, we saved the patient in the emergency room. And now it's time for the patient to recover and get back to walking and talking and proper health again.
Yeah.
And so it's this first shocking, what we've been through is shocking. I was talking to an executive today, and he was with the company probably for a decade and now is still working kind of part-time consulting. And we're having a chat about, like, we're in the middle of deep, deep history.
Yeah.
Like this is a notable, moment in the history of civilization. and it's incredibly shocking. But it's just the beginning. It's like now it's like, we got hit by this tsunami, and now we got to deal with the floods and all the other things like that, and maybe potentially another wave. So it's quite a weird feeling. And I had that thought over the weekend. It's like, okay, so this is reality. People in Canada are starting to relax and get a little bit more comfortable, but we still got a lot of work to do. So, as you and I both have chatted before, and this is where we need to continue to be prepared for a fairly rough economic scenario. And man, I hope we're wrong. Like I would love nothing more to be wrong about the beliefs I have about what's going to happen economically, and it'd be notably better and notably easier than what I foresee or what the experts that I'm learning from are kind of sharing. And but the other thing is a shift from a health crisis to an economic crisis, and we're in a different phase. Like you shared with me initially a long time ago, Brad, the hammer and the dance. There's the hammer, when the system shuts down, we have to manage cash to make it through, and now we're in a dance of this new economy that we have to adapt and make ourselves profitable for this foreseeing future.
And Charles Darwin, the adaptable will survive.
Yes.
That's the key, which we've spoken about already today.
Yeah.
So what about, one of the key things we've got to talk about today is accountability. Now, do you think that, what's your perspective? Because I was speaking with a CEO this week, and they kind of had the perspective, look, it's the COVID crisis. This is unprecedented times, as you just mentioned. But don't you think that, if we don't achieve our KPIs now, or if we don't achieve the priorities that we've set, the 3 to 5 priorities per person and per leadership team member and per the whole company, if we don't achieve those, if we don't do any of them, it doesn't really matter, because we've just got to survive. I don't know. I feel a bit uncomfortable. That's not really right.
No, that's not an accountable mindset. I mean, come on. Now, let me give an example. So a company I work with in the US, we had a planning session last week with the team.
Yep.
And we did let the sales team off the hook. We did. Because they lost their ability to close business through the month of March. And because of what happened, a bunch of their prospects went a different direction. They're going to pause. They have a renewal cycle in their business that they were missing because of the timing. So the sales team didn't have a great March, which softened their quarterly results. But they got new goals this quarter, and they're hammering down to achieve them. They're slightly adjusted, not that much. But the operations team, who was in delivery mode for their clients, delivered exceptionally. Right? So it's like there's certain points where it is truly beyond your control, and you have to kind of be realistic about it. But it's not because of a lack of doing the work or staying focused. It's because of lack of actual ability in the market for those decision makers to decide, or they were going a different direction. So it's kind of situational. But we've got another session starting on Wednesday, a 2-day session for another company, a very successful company. And, there's very few people who can use the excuse in some cases of this virus to say that they didn't achieve what they needed to do. Now, again, if you're a restaurant business and you're the dining room manager, or you're the maitre d', or even the marketing person, you can't hold them accountable for not having guests show up for 5-star dinners in a 5-star restaurant, because that's just not realistic. So I think it's within context. Some people get a bit of a pass, but it's not because they didn't do the work or because they got distracted. It's because it actually wasn't capable. Because the high performers will always find a way if it is possible. And again, please hear me clearly. I'm not saying it's always possible. Tourism businesses, restaurant businesses, it ain't possible.
Yeah. But I like the word recalibrate. Once in a while,
yes,
you can get a free pass, not to not to fail and forget about it, because that's the instinct of a lot of undisciplined people, right? It is,
Yes.
oh, well, we're not going to make it. I'm just going to rock up and go to work, and I'll make some calls and stuff, but I'm not going to make my target. Okay. But that's an undisciplined approach. Instead,
Yes.
recalibrate. Now, I definitely understand what you said about restaurants, but we could also talk about cinemas. We've given two examples today of cinemas who pivoted, and restaurants who pivoted, and the restaurants are making more money. Maybe that's not possible in your environment, but this is where recalibration matters. When something happens, it's not about going, well, all of the discipline that we've implemented in the business doesn't matter anymore because of the coronavirus. We've just got
Exactly.
to read the news. What matters is, okay, calibrate. So that means we think we're going to be 20% down. How can we maintain the gross profit so that we can sustain the business or whatever?
Yeah. As somebody said, there was an executive at one of the companies that we work with said, well, we don't have time to plan. I'm like, what are you talking about? You have to plan more than ever, because people are going to get fragmented and start running on their own story and their own ideas. You've got to pull people back together and stay focused and accountable. And the funny thing is, Brad, as you know, like what I've seen, when you've got great people, they do amazing work and they find great ideas and they find the way to get something done. And again, please, I'm not saying there's some things that are almost impossible in this market.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I was having a conversation, and there's a big distinction between rules and recommendations. There are rules by different companies of what you're allowed to do.
Yeah.
And then there are recommendations.
Yeah.
So, if you look at the entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurial leaders, they will find ways to do what they need to do in this environment. And if they're smart and they're disciplined, they will think about it and come up with different approaches and strategies and ways, and to do it appropriately. But some people just take it as an excuse to sort of, well, it's the COVID, don't have to do it. And those are generally companies that often underperform, and they're more likely to find ways not to do things, and they're just comfortable. And there's a lot of people who got really comfortable in this last decade.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Now that's all gone. It's all got shaken.
Yeah, definitely. So where I live, we've been effectively in a recession for 4 or 5 years because the iron ore price dropped. We're very much a mining economy, and that's played out through the economy quite a lot. So to a degree, the companies that got really close to the edge, in my observation, the ones that were like, we've got to save the company 3, 4, 5 years ago, now they're the ones that are in an awesome position right now. They're the ones that are like, well, we've made the cuts. We've rebuilt our core capital target. We've got sufficient core capital target, 2 months of fixed expenses, cash at bank. So we've got enough cash in the business to be able to withstand a few shocks. And we've kind of worked towards getting some newer customers or some better customers. So in one way, having gone through that recession over the last few years has been a bit of a blessing, dare I say it. Because it means that we've been better positioned in some circumstances to move forward. And it hasn't been as much of a shock where you've got all of that massive amount of complacency and fat that you do see in some of these organizations that are suffering so much at the moment.
Yeah. And some CEOs have said, wow, it's amazing how we have had to let some people go, which is unfortunate, but we're way more productive.
Yeah.
And you hear stories of companies that strip out an entire middle management layer, and you hear of these restructurings, and it twists my guts inside. I hate hearing it.
Yeah.
It just feels bad, and I feel bad for the people. But as companies grow, you end up adding people where you don't need people. I had one person recently say, you know what? The team that we built in this one particular division of our company was bigger than one of our competitors that's 10 times the size. We had more humans doing a function that a competitor 10 times the size had.
Yeah.
But in a moment, you always think you need these people. So that's the advantage of these things, is it kind of rolls back some of the unnecessary systems or projects or fat in the system. And if you're dialed in on accountability, and focused on the things that matter the most, which a lot of our work is to help people decide what matters the most and what to ignore, which is a very hard thing to figure out as a leader. Yeah, things they're often, they can be better off. But I got a question for you, Brad.
Yeah.
Why are we always talking about accountability? Like, you would think it's simple. Like, do the damn job you were hired to do. Produce the result you were supposed to produce. And again, with high performers, we don't even need to talk about it. But why is accountability like, it's such a big thing, and it's a big part of the work that we do often, right? We work on dialing in strategy, but then setting up accountability and basically building a better, more accountable team, more able to deliver as expected team. But why is it such a big thing, do you think?
Well, my perspective, my context, I wrote a book. It's got 5 chapters, and it's about that subject. One of the chapters is purely about accountability. So I think that people don't know how to hold people accountable, and they don't want to. And to your point, they think, hang on, the exchange of money equals the person doing the job. So, for example, that's not.
Sorry.
So, for example, I'm going to have a person come and mow my lawn, and therefore I will pay them $100, and the lawn will be mowed, and I will give them the $100. That's the exchange. And so, on a very superficial level, people look at it as a monetary exchange like that, and it's just not that. Because if you put yourself in the position of the person is, I think, one of the biggest things that a person is looking for is pride in their job.
Yes.
They want to be proud of their company. They want to be proud of their product. They want to be proud of their leader. They want that. And a key part of that is accountability. So if you've got an A player and they're looking across to someone else, A player, one of your best performers, who isn't being held accountable for doing the wrong things, then they think, well, this leader just doesn't care. Okay. The problem is that the leader, unless either they've had a military background or an upbringing that's high in accountability, I think that it just doesn't come natural to them. Because what typically happens is, what can often happen is a person is an employee, and then they move up from being an employee to perhaps a supervisor of peers, and then a manager, and then like a leader, and then maybe an entrepreneurial CEO. They go through the kind of the pyramid of the org chart. But they start with their friends, and there's this really uncomfortable sense of, how can I get my peers and my friends to do what I tell them to do? And I think that's right at the root of it. And people can go in one of two kind of directions. Either they want to be their friend, or they think, I've got to be completely militant and go over the top. And I think that in honesty, it's nothing to do with either of those. It's just, A, set the expectation. So this is what we expect you to do. And then B, regularly revisit that and hold the person accountable to that expectation. Kevin, we want you to make 100 widgets a week. And now it's the end of week 1. How many widgets have you made? And then, so what are you going to do about that? So it's the context of accountability, I think, that really matters. And people have got the wrong kind of framing, or they think it's someone else's job.
For sure. And they've often not had a good role model and haven't been trained well in how to do it. That's why some amazing managers come out of the big machine companies.
Yeah.
Because in those companies, you learn that skill. And that's why those companies have become big and stayed big and continue to grow. Yeah, it's interesting, Brad, because we see often in it, and that's a big part of what we help people to do. And at the root of it, there are people who don't like conflict. And contrary to popular belief, most CEOs are not the jerks that you see on TV.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And they care about their people, and they're more likely to let people off the hook than create the tension that's required to help people to grow and improve. There's the odd one that's really good at that naturally. And that's why we run the sessions that we run. I mean, most of the companies we work with really care about their people. They're culture-oriented people, almost people-first environments, which does make accountability a bit more of a struggle for them because it's not the way they think. They are not the slave driver, you're only a number as good as your last
But that's a
result
huge
type
problem. That's a huge problem because
Yeah.
you think I'm going to build this wonderful culture and there's going to be people playing in harps in the corner, right? And there'll be flowers and there'll be people wearing flowers.
Be puppy dogs and you have massages on Tuesdays and it's just like an oasis. It's amazing.
And people who work there think that you just don't care. That's the problem. This person doesn't care about hitting the numbers. And then, so they don't care because people respect what you inspect. If you care about...
Because they're not doing it and they're not doing it and they're not, and that's why in the work that we do, it sounds so basic, and it is. But almost every company we go into, the expectations aren't clear.
Yeah.
Like your landscaper, it's cut the grass, trim the edge, take the grass away. That's simple. Once a year, they might trim the hedges. Once a year, they might scrape the grass and pull the dead grass out of it. And that little thing that puts the plugs into it to break up the soil and, aerate it, it's called. And it might spray some junk on it every once in a while to make it greener or kill the bugs. But in business, there's all this going on and people lose sight of what their job is. And that's why in the work that we do, and I'm telling I know you do the same thing I do on this, Brad, but I will tell you the thing that we do time and time again is we go into organizations, we don't know who's who in the zoo. Like, I cannot tell who the good executives are because, some of them talk slick, some of them are smart, but that has nothing to do with effectiveness. How they show up in the boardroom almost has nothing to do with how they are as a leader.
Yeah.
Right? Because it can be very deceiving, and we've been, conned lots of, not conned, wasn't malicious. Been made the wrong judgment. And that's why we always go down to some simple things. Hey, what are the KPIs or numbers that indicate they're doing a good job? The basics of a scorecard. We strap it back into scaling up or top grading, depending on which way we're looking at it. And then 3 or 5 objectives they must achieve. Now,
simple.
Even that sounds simple, but that's also hard. Because to get them to come up with these clear KPIs, numbers that indicate performance, just like the gauges on a dashboard, as we know.
Yep.
And then when it comes down to the goals to achieve, man, people come up with vague crap. And they're not bad people. But for the last 25 years, I've been saying this phrase again and again and again. Okay, so how do we know that you achieved that goal? What does great look like? What is the measure of success? I've now boiled it down into, okay, what's the number one outcome and what's the best guess of the EBITDA or net income impact?
Tell me about that bit.
Because if I don't,
tell me about that bit, because you just dig a little bit. What's the best guess of the EBITDA impact? Just explain that a bit.
Well, business is a numbers game, and you need to know the bloody numbers. If you don't know the financial repercussion of your decisions, you shouldn't be making a decision. And I've been in the meetings with companies, $100 million company. People are passionate. This needs to be the goal. We got to do this. Okay. And I'm listening. I'm going, man, that just sounds like a waste of time. Sometimes I'm wrong, but I'd say, okay, great. Well, how much is this going to impact the bottom line? Well, I don't know. Well, of course you don't know. You haven't thought about it. Well, if you're worded like, let's do some, hey, Mr. CFO, let's do some math on this.
Yeah.
Try and crunch some numbers. Well, we came back with $7,000. It's $100 million business that should produce $12 million of profit per year. We're not talking about $7,000 as executives. I'm sorry. Well, we can, but then we're not doing the right thing as leaders. So people get passionate about things. So I just got sick. And now there's 2 things of it. 1, priorities that are too small. 2, how do I hold you accountable? It says improve the sales process. Like, Brad, I want to start yelling and screaming and swearing when I get talking about this stuff. It drives me bonkers.
Yeah.
Improve the sales process. Oh, isn't that nice? I'm going to go pet a cat. Like what does it mean, improve this? Oh, we're going to streamline the sales. Oh, awesome. Great. Oh, we're going to implement a CRM and implement. Okay, great. So you're probably going to spend more time managing sales, your salespeople are going to spend more time administering.
Yeah.
And you think this is good for your business. So
Well,
it's like, and again, so I learned this from one of my entrepreneurs. He said, if we're going to implement a new software is meant to automate work.
Yeah.
Automating work reduces jobs. Reducing jobs means we have less people in that department that does that work. So if I'm going to go and spend a couple $1,000,000 on the software, tell me how many people are going to be reallocated to a different department, because the department has to shrink. Otherwise, we don't need the software. Sorry, Brad, I got excited about that one.
No.
Clear, that's where accountability starts. Clear on outcomes.
This comes innately to you and I because we've done it so many times.
Many times.
Okay,
and no company has it. Almost no company we work with starts with it. Sorry, Brad. Go ahead.
No, I agree. So many times that we've done it, I've done it. You just think, okay, so it's May, and what will be different by the end of June, by the end of the quarter? Like,
yes.
Okay, so we're going to redesign our sales process. How? Why? It's got to be specific. Like,
good old SMART.
Otherwise, it's just. I don't know. I'm like you. I'm pretty hard on people around setting the goals because so many times.
I take that back. Take that back, my friend. No, you're not hard on people. You think like a good CEO. You want to know the value they're going to create from the time and money they invest. You want to know the ROI. It's not about being hard. It's just that's just if we're going to invest, what are we going to get?
Yeah. What I'll say is I don't tolerate goals that are not specific.
Correct.
It's just a waste. It's like people think that you just don't care if you let them get away with that as an advisor to the leadership team.
Or they're thrilled because they know they can just kind of show up and try.
Or they think it's business as usual because they've always gotten it away with it before.
Exactly. I tell you, that's why the companies we work with, that's one of the big things that improves performance. And by the way, gives us a better executive team or leadership team. Now, often not all the same people are in the jobs because some people are really good at talking and they're actually not good at getting stuff done. I've seen it again and again and again. Like this is like, it's basic, Brad, but it's just uncommon.
So let me ask you this.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm losing it on this.
That's good. I like the fact I can get you fired up.
Bad words are wanting to come out of my mouth as I talk about this. It just, I get so upset. It just drives me bonkers. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me ask you this. Please. So CEO comes to you and they say, all right, I want someone to hold my team accountable. What's your reaction? So I want to engage you, Kevin, because I want someone to hold my team accountable. So I've got my answer, but I want to hear yours first.
Of course.
Because you've heard that. I've heard that before, right?
Of course. And I was dumb enough earlier in my career to actually do it. So now I know, and it'd be a conversational role play. I say, hey, Brad, the reality is it is your job to hold your people accountable. If I start holding them accountable, you might as well just sign your paycheck over to me because I'm the CEO. And that's screwy. So what we can do is help you set up more clear accountability so they can actually hold themselves accountable because what they're supposed to deliver is so damn clear. And then you just have to make a comment here or there. But it's the ideal accountability systems people can self-manage because the expectations are so damn clear. That's why we have people red, yellow, or green, each of their KPIs. Red, failed. Yellow, close. Green, got it. Each of their KPIs and their goals, which is usually 3 to 5. We also get them to throw in a couple personal ones based on the work in in your book, Your Oxygen Mask First, to take care of themselves. And even we do it on the monthly meetings as we're trending towards the quarter. So they get trained to self-report and hold themselves accountable. And then the CEO just has to applaud or show a bit of disappointment or, give people a last warning every once in a while. So that's a bit of a long answer, Brad, but I'm happy to hear yours. I'd love to hear yours.
Look, it's not too dissimilar. And I think it's not my job to hold people accountable. So I use this concept of the credibility chasm in the initial stages. And that is leadership team. This is the difference between the things that you said you were going to do and what you did. Now that's on the path to the gold standard for leadership teams, which is peer accountability. And that is,
Yep.
to your point, I hold myself accountable and I hold those around me accountable. So then the job of the CEO is to own the framework that makes all of that stuff stick. So for example,
Yep.
owning the weekly meeting where people will come together and talk about it, and coaching the leadership team members around the things they're doing, and then having the hard conversations. Or often, when you get used to it, it's the easy conversations. So Kevin, you said you were going to do 100 widgets last week, and now for the 17th week in a row, you've only done 12 out of 100. And then just let the pause do its magic. My point being, it's the CEO's job to just own the framework and not to do that. And that means that...
And let the system run itself, because you're only going to show up 3 quarters in a row with everything red and expect to show up.
Yeah.
Now, some people might do it forever, but then the CEO, it's so easy and obvious in terms of what needs to get done. Either the person's job's got to change or whatever it happens to be. And there's only so many times you have to re-clarify the goal because they were confused. My question, Brad, is I say, okay, great. I get people sometimes, depending, to rate themselves. How would you rate your performance? A, B, or C? What are you going to do to be an A next? What do you need to do to be an A next quarter? No use crying over spilled milk. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do? What are you going to do to deliver as to expectation next quarter? And then we go around and talk about it.
So if you're an A player, you're going to be drawn to that like a magnet. If you're a C player,
love it. You're going to hate it and hate me.
Yeah,
exactly. I get the dagger look, but it's also meant to be respectful, and you're not like rubbing their nose in it. You're like, seriously, we didn't do our best work.
Yeah.
How do we do our best work? And CEOs love it when we facilitate these conversations, and ideally they're a part of it. They chime in and don't leave it all to us.
So we're coming up on time.
Yeah.
There was another point that we had. We discussed last week A players in the team. Did you have a point that you wanted to make on A players stacking the deck?
Couple of things. When you go and tighten up accountability, we talked last week about building an amazing team, more great people that could be available in the market. But when you have A players, you don't have to work too hard on dialing in these accountabilities.
Yeah.
Sometimes A players it might be a little bit messy or loose. But once you get this kind of system, they want to deliver and produce. So we kind of give everyone the benefit of the doubt initially, maybe even the first couple quarters. But after that, the A players just thrive. Yeah. Like they will be up all night to make sure they deliver as expected, or like damn close. And then the other people, it just becomes, a host of excuses.
And to that point,
so it separates, the men from the boys, the women from the girls. Like it really shows who can produce.
Yeah.
And for the CEO, it helps because we're doing it statistically and based on goals, where sometimes it's been mushy before. Now, sometimes we still have to go in and do a 360 on someone that might not be right, or get a bit more data. Maybe we get engagement data on the person's team or something else. But it makes it much, much clearer. And it's also very fair to the people because we're giving them the best environment to produce their best work.
Yeah.
Like if you can't deliver great work in that environment, you're either in the wrong job or in the wrong company.
Yeah.
And that's why it's good for the company, and it's great for the person, because who doesn't want to have self-accountability, i.e. that they don't need a manager breathing down their neck. They know their marching orders and they just go and do their best work.
Yeah. I don't know. All I would say to that very valid and good point, typically what I hear after a year, the thing I most often hear with the leadership team is, this feels like a different company. It's the same people in the room, or maybe often it's not, but it feels like I'm working in a different company. And that's just the application to our earlier point of accountability. Dropping in a framework that'll work.
Right.
All right. So we're coming up.
And that's why, Brad, and that's why a lot of our clients are doing so well in these challenging times, because they have this accountability structure so they can quickly maneuver and move, because people are already focused and lined up. It's not always easy, but it's easier for them to move because they already know where they were going in the first place.
Yeah.
All right, back to you, Brad.
No. So I think that's about it. We're a bit over time. So I think we'll call it a day at that. So thanks everyone for listening. This has been the Growth Whisperers podcast. I'm Brad Giles and my co-host Kevin Lawrence. You can find us on YouTube if you'd like the video version, or we're obviously on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everywhere else. So where can they reach you, Kevin? Where can people reach you?
Lawrence and Co, lawrenceandco.com, our website where you can get more about the work we do and lots of the other resources that we share there. And yourself, Brad?
Yeah, and for me, it's evolutionpartners.com.au. All right, well, with that, we'll call it an evening. Thanks very much, Kevin. It's been good to chat.
It's always fun, Brad, and hopefully we created some good value for those that are listening or watching today.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See ya.
Have a great week.